Amara never thought moving to a quiet neighborhood would change her life in such an unexpected way. She had just arrived in town with her 2 kids, ready to start fresh after landing a teaching position at the local university. The house wasn't fancy, but it was perfect for them. A small front yard where the kids could play, a quiet street, and neighbors who seemed friendly enough when she first drove by. The moving truck had barely pulled away when she met Patricia. This woman lived 3 houses down and seemed to appear out of nowhere, walking up the driveway with a clipboard in hand and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Patricia introduced herself as the head of the Homeowners Association, though she said it in a way that sounded more like she owned the entire street. "Welcome to Meadowbrook," Patricia said, looking Amara up and down. "We have very specific standards here. I'm sure you'll want to fit in." Amara smiled warmly, extending her hand. "Thank you. I'm excited to be here. My kids are already talking about making new friends." Patricia barely shook her hand before pulling out a thick booklet from her clipboard. "This is the HOA handbook. I suggest you read it cover to cover. We've worked very hard to maintain a certain look around here, and we expect everyone to follow the rules." There was something in Patricia's tone that felt off, but Amara brushed it aside. She was used to people being a bit standoffish at first. Growing up in Nigeria and then moving to different cities for her education, she'd learned that patience and kindness usually won people over. The first week went smoothly enough. Amara unpacked boxes, enrolled her kids in school, and started preparing for her classes at the university. She hung some colorful African fabric in her living room windows, the kind her mother had given her years ago. The patterns were bold and beautiful, reminding her of home every time she looked at them. On day 8, Patricia showed up again. "Those curtains," Patricia said, pointing at the windows without even saying hello. "They're not appropriate for the neighborhood aesthetic. The HOA guidelines state that window treatments should be neutral tones only." Amara looked confused. "I read through the handbook. I didn't see anything about curtain colors." "Page 47, section 12, Patricia said quickly. "Window treatments must maintain visual harmony with surrounding homes. Those patterns are too bright. They'll need to come down." Amara kept her voice calm. "With respect, I don't think traditional fabric counts as a violation. They're just curtains." Patricia's smile tightened. "I'm trying to help you avoid fines. But if you want to do this the hard way, that's your choice." She turned and walked away, leaving Amara standing in her doorway, completely baffled. The following days brought more visits. Patricia complained about Amara's car being parked slightly over the edge of her driveway. She measured the grass height and claimed it was half an inch too long. When Amara's kids drew hopscotch squares on the driveway with washable chalk, Patricia left a note citing a violation for altering common area appearance. Other neighbors started noticing. The woman next door, an elderly lady named Dorothy, came over one afternoon with cookies. "Don't let Patricia get to you," Dorothy whispered. "She does this to everyone she thinks she can push around." "Most of us just try to stay out of her way." "But why doesn't anyone say anything?" Amara asked. Dorothy sighed. "Because she's been on that HOA board for 12 years. She knows every rule, every loophole. She's made people's lives miserable before. One family had to spend thousands fighting her citations. Eventually, they just moved." Amara felt a knot forming in her stomach. She hadn't moved across the country to deal with this kind of treatment. But she also believed in handling things peacefully. That's what her karate instructor had taught her from the very beginning, back when she was just 7 years old in Lagos. Her father had enrolled her in classes after she'd been bullied at school. The sensei, a strict but kind man, had taught her that martial arts wasn't about fighting. It was about discipline, control, and protecting yourself when words failed. She'd continued training through university, eventually earning her black belt, then her second degree, then third, and finally fourth. She'd even competed internationally, winning several championships, but Amara never talked about it. She didn't wear her gi around town or mention her training to strangers. To her, karate was personal. It was about inner strength, not showing off. She'd only use those skills if absolutely necessary, and she hoped that day would never come. 3 weeks after moving in, Patricia called an HOA meeting. Amara decided to attend, thinking maybe she could clear things up face-to-face with the whole board present. She walked into the community center that evening, carrying a folder with photos and documentation of everything Patricia had cited her for. The meeting room was half full. Patricia sat at the front table with two other board members, both of whom looked uncomfortable. As Amara found a seat, she noticed several neighbors whispering and glancing her way. The energy in the room felt tense. When Patricia started speaking, her voice carried across the room with practiced authority. She went through regular business first, then reached the part Amara had been dreading. "We have a situation with one of our newer residents," Patricia announced, not even looking at Amara directly. "Someone who seems to think the rules don't apply to them. Someone who clearly doesn't understand how we do things in this community." Amara felt every eye turned toward her. Her heart raced, but she kept her breathing steady, just like she'd learned in training. "Stay calm, stay centered. Don't react emotionally," Patricia continued, listing every minor citation, making each one sound like a major offense. Then she said something that made the entire room go quiet. "Perhaps people who can't follow basic rules should reconsider whether they belong in a place like Meadowbrook." The words hung in the air. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed, but nobody spoke up. Amara stood slowly, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. "May I respond?" Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "If you must." What happened next would be just the beginning of a confrontation that neither woman saw coming. Amara opened her folder and pulled out the first photograph. Her hands were steady, though inside she felt like a storm was brewing. She'd dealt with difficult people before, but something about Patricia's tone, that dismissive wave of her hand, hit differently. "This is my driveway," Amara said, holding up the photo so everyone could see. "The citation says my car was parked illegally. As you can see, the wheels are fully on my property, not even touching the sidewalk." Patricia rolled her eyes. "The issue is the visual obstruction it creates for neighbors. My car is a sedan, a normal four-door sedan. How does that obstruct anything?" Amara kept her voice level, but she could feel the frustration rising. She pulled out another photo. "This citation is for my grass being too long. I measured it myself. 3 inches. The handbook says grass should be between 2 and 4 inches. Mine is right in the middle of the acceptable range." One of the other board members, an older man who'd been silent until now, leaned forward to look at the photo. He glanced at Patricia, then back at Amara. "That grass looks fine to me." Patricia shot him a look that could freeze water. "The measurement was taken by me personally, and I stand by it." Amara pulled out the last photo, the one of her kids' chalk drawings. "And this violation was for my children drawing hopscotch on our driveway, with washable chalk. That disappears with rain." "It's an eyesore," Patricia said flatly. "This is a respectable neighborhood, not a playground." "Children live here," Amara replied, her voice still calm but growing firmer. "Children play. That's normal. Not when it disrupts the community standards." The room stayed quiet. Amara looked around at the other faces, hoping someone would speak up, say something, anything. But they all looked away. Dorothy, the kind neighbor who'd brought cookies, gave her a sympathetic look but said nothing. A younger couple near the back seemed uncomfortable but kept their eyes on the floor. Amara sat back down, realizing that facts and evidence didn't matter here. Patricia had made up her mind, and nobody was brave enough to challenge her. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. As people filed out, Patricia made a point of handing Amara another notice. "Your herb garden in the backyard. It's visible from the street through the fence gaps. That's another violation. Vegetable gardens must be screened from view. Those are herbs," Amara said quietly. "Basil, mint, cilantro. For cooking? Same difference. Screen it or remove it. You have 2 weeks." Over the next month, things got worse. Patricia seemed to drive by Amara's house daily, looking for new problems. She cited Amara for leaving her trash bins visible from the street, even though they were only out for 30 minutes before the truck came. She complained about the kids playing outside too late, claiming noise violations at 7 in the evening. She even reported that Amara's mailbox was the wrong shade of black. Every citation came with a fine. $50 here, $75 there. They were adding up, and Amara knew that's exactly what Patricia wanted. To make staying in the house so expensive and stressful that she'd give up and leave. But Amara wasn't going anywhere. She'd worked too hard to get here. The university position was a dream job. Her kids were finally settling in, making friends at school. She'd already enrolled them in activities. This was supposed to be. Still, the stress was taking its toll. Amara found herself constantly anxious, always looking over her shoulder, wondering what Patricia would find wrong next. She started taking her evening runs later when it was dark, just to avoid running into her. She'd pause before taking her trash out, making sure Patricia's car wasn't coming down the street. One afternoon, Amara was planting new flowers in her front garden when a car pulled up. A woman around her age stepped out looking nervous. "Hi," the woman said. "I'm Rachel. I live on the next street over. I heard about what's been happening with Patricia." Amara stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. "News travels fast, I guess." "She did the same thing to us when we first moved in," Rachel said. "My husband is from Mexico and Patricia made our lives miserable for months. Citations for everything. She even called immigration on him even though he's a citizen. Born in Texas." Amara felt her stomach drop. "That's horrible." She eventually moved on to someone else, but only after we threatened legal action. Even then she makes comments whenever she sees us. Rachel handed Amara a business card. "This is the lawyer we used, just in case you need help." After Rachel left, Amara sat on her front steps staring at the card. She didn't want to spend money on lawyers. She didn't want to fight. That wasn't who she was. Her entire martial arts training had taught her that real strength was in avoiding conflict, not seeking it. That evening, her daughter came home from school upset. "Mom, Tyler said we're going to get kicked out of the neighborhood. He said his mom heard Mrs. Henderson talking about it." Amara pulled her daughter close. "We're not going anywhere, sweetheart. Don't worry about what people say." But inside she was worried. Not for herself, but for her kids. They'd already been through so much with the move, adjusting to a new school, leaving their friends behind. Now they had to deal with this too. The breaking point came 3 days later. Amara arrived home from teaching to find another notice on her door. This one wasn't about grass or trash bins. Patricia was demanding that Amara remove the African fabric from her windows, claiming multiple neighbors had complained about the inappropriate cultural displays. Amara stood there, holding the notice, feeling something shift inside her. She'd been patient. She'd been kind. She'd followed every rule, documented everything, kept her cool even when Patricia was clearly in the wrong. But this was different. This wasn't about HOA rules anymore. This was personal. This was about who she was, where she came from, her identity. She walked inside and looked at the fabric hanging in her window. The vibrant yellows, oranges, and reds. The geometric patterns her grandmother had taught her about when she was little. The same patterns that connected her to her mother, her ancestors, her home. Patricia wanted her to take them down, to hide who she was, to make herself smaller, less visible, less African. Amara took a deep breath, centering herself the way her sensei had taught her. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Find your balance. Find your calm. The fabric stayed exactly where it was. 2 days later, Amara was checking her mail when Patricia's car screeched to a stop in front of her house. The older woman practically jumped out, her face red with anger. "I gave you a direct order," Patricia shouted, marching across the lawn. "Those curtains should be gone." "They're staying," Amara said simply, closing her mailbox. "You think you can just ignore me? You think you're special?" Patricia's voice was getting louder, and Amara noticed several neighbors had come outside, watching from their porches and driveways. "I think I have a right to hang whatever I want in my own windows," Amara replied, keeping her voice level. Patricia stepped closer, getting right in Amara's face. "Listen to me carefully. I run this neighborhood. What I say goes, and I say those things come down. Or I'll make your life so miserable you'll wish you'd never moved here." Amara could feel her heart pounding, but her training kicked in. "Stay calm, don't escalate. Create space." She took a step back. "Please don't get in my personal space." Patricia laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Or what? What are you going to do about it?" Then Patricia did something Amara hadn't expected. She reached out and poked Amara's shoulder hard with her finger. "Nothing," Patricia said, poking her again. "That's what you'll do. Because people like you never do anything." The world seemed to slow down. Amara looked at Patricia's finger, still pressed against her shoulder. She looked at the woman's smug face. She looked at the neighbors watching, frozen, waiting to see what would happen next. Amara's voice came out quiet but firm. "Don't touch me again," Patricia smiled. "Or what?" She poked Amara one more time, harder than before. That was the moment everything changed. Amara turned and started walking toward her front door. She was done with this conversation. Done with Patricia's harassment. Done with trying to reason with someone who had no intention of being reasonable. "Don't you walk away from me," Patricia shouted, her voice shrill. Amara kept walking. She heard footsteps behind her, fast and angry. Before she could reach her porch, Patricia grabbed her arm and yanked her backward. That was it. That was the line. In her years of training, Amara's instructors had always emphasized one thing above everything else. You never use your skills to show off. You never use them to intimidate. You only use them when someone puts their hands on you or someone else in a harmful way, and even then you use the minimum force necessary. Amara's body moved on instinct, muscle memory taking over. She turned into Patricia's grip, stepped to the side, and with a simple circular motion broke free from the hold. It was a basic technique, something she'd practiced thousands of times. Gentle but effective. Patricia stumbled back, surprised. For a second, she just stood there, looking at her empty hand like she couldn't understand what had happened. "I asked you not to touch me," Amara said quietly. Her heart was racing, but her breathing was controlled, steady. "Please leave my property." Patricia's face went from shocked to furious in an instant. "You pushed me. Everyone saw that. You assaulted me." "I didn't push you. I removed your hand from my arm." There's a difference. Around them, neighbors had moved closer. At least 6 or 7 people were watching now, some recording on their phones. Dorothy was on her porch, hand over her mouth. A man Amara had never spoken to was standing in his driveway, keys frozen halfway to his car door. "You're going to regret this," Patricia hissed. Her face was red and a vein was pulsing in her forehead. "I'm going to have you arrested. I'm going to have you thrown out of this neighborhood." She pulled out her phone, already dialing. "Yes, I need police. I've been assaulted." "Yes, assaulted. By my neighbor. She attacked me unprovoked." Amara stayed calm. She knew the truth. She knew what had really happened. And she could see at least 3 people holding up phones, which meant they had video evidence. Patricia was still on the phone, talking fast, exaggerating everything. "She's violent. She just moved here and she's already attacking residents. Please hurry." Then Patricia made her biggest mistake. She hung up the phone and charged at Amara. Not a push, not a shove. A full charge, arms out, clearly trying to tackle her. Everything Amara had learned over 25 years of training compressed into 3 seconds. She saw Patricia coming, saw the wild anger in her eyes, saw the lack of control, the reckless aggression. Patricia had no training, no discipline, no idea what she was doing. She was just running on rage. Amara waited until the last possible moment. Then she simply stepped to the side. Patricia's momentum carried her forward off balance. Amara extended her leg in a clean sweep. Not hard, not violent, just enough to redirect Patricia's own energy. The older woman went down, landing on her side on the grass. Not injured, not hurt, just grounded. Before Patricia could get up, Amara was there. She knelt beside her and placed one hand on Patricia's shoulder, using just enough pressure to keep her still. It was a control hold, something police officers used. No pain, no damage, just immobilization. "Stop," Amara said firmly. "Just stop. I don't want to hurt you. I've never wanted to hurt you, but you need to stop putting your hands on me." Patricia struggled for a moment, then realized she couldn't move, couldn't get up. This small woman, this quiet professor she'd been tormenting for weeks, had her completely controlled. "Let me go," Patricia gasped. "You're assaulting me. Everyone's watching. Everyone's watching you attack me," Amara said. "And everyone's watching me defend myself without hurting you." She held the position for a few more seconds, then released Patricia and stood up. She even offered her hand to help Patricia up. Patricia slapped the hand away and scrambled to her feet on her own, breathing hard. Her perfectly styled hair was messy. Her white blouse had grass stains. Her face was a mixture of humiliation and disbelief. How did you?" Patricia couldn't seem to form words. "I asked you multiple times to stop touching me," Amara said. Her voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath it now. "I walked away. You followed me. You grabbed me. You charged at me. I defended myself. That's all that happened here." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. 2 police cars pulled up within minutes, lights flashing. 2 officers got out and Patricia immediately rushed toward them. "That's her. She attacked me! I want her arrested." The younger officer held up his hand. "Ma'am, slow down. Let's take this one step at a time." The older officer, a tall man with gray in his hair, was already looking around at the crowd. Did anyone see what happened? 3 people stepped forward immediately. Dorothy spoke first, her voice shaky but clear. Patricia grabbed Amara first. Amara tried to walk away, and Patricia grabbed her and then charged at her. Amara was just defending herself. The man from across the street nodded. I got the whole thing on my doorbell camera. Patricia was the aggressor the entire time. Another neighbor, a woman holding her phone, said, I recorded it too. Patricia attacked her. Amara barely touched her. The younger officer looked at Patricia. Is this true? Did you initiate physical contact? She was trespassing on my authority. Patricia sputtered. She was violating HOA rules and I have every right to enforce them. HOA rules don't give you the right to put your hands on people, the officer said. The older officer was watching Amara carefully. She stood quietly, hands at her sides, breathing normal, completely composed. He'd been a cop for 23 years, and he'd seen plenty of fights. He'd also seen trained fighters. The way this woman moved, the way she carried herself, that wasn't luck or accident. Ma'am, he said to Amara, can you tell me what happened? Amara explained calmly, step by step. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't add drama. She just told the truth. When she finished, the officer asked, do you have any training in self-defense? Yes, sir. I've studied martial arts since I was 7 years old. What kind? Shotokan karate. I hold a 4th-degree black belt. The officer's eyebrows went up. He glanced at his partner, then back at Amara. 4th degree? Yes, sir. He looked at Patricia, who was still disheveled and angry on the grass. Then he looked back at Amara, who didn't have a scratch on her. Wasn't even breathing hard, ma'am. If you're a 4th-degree black belt and you wanted to hurt this woman, she'd be in an ambulance right now. From what I'm seeing and what witnesses are saying, you showed remarkable restraint. Patricia's face went pale. Are you saying you're not going to arrest her? I'm saying that from what everyone here is telling me, including video evidence, you were the one who initiated physical contact. You grabbed her. You charged at her. She defended herself using minimal force. That's textbook self-defense. The younger officer nodded. Actually, ma'am, you could be charged with assault. Multiple witnesses say you grabbed her first and then charged at her. Patricia looked around wildly, like she was waiting for someone to back her up. But the neighbors just stared back at her. Some looked satisfied. Others looked uncomfortable. But nobody came to her defense. This is ridiculous, Patricia said, but her voice had lost its power. I'm on the HOA board. I was just doing my job. Your job doesn't include putting your hands on residents, the older officer said. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to file a report. If this woman wants to press charges, she can. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you stay away from each other. He turned to Amara. Do you want to press charges? Amara looked at Patricia, who was staring at the ground now, all her bravado gone. Part of Amara wanted to say yes, wanted Patricia to face consequences for weeks of harassment and racism and intimidation. But another part of her, the part that had been trained in discipline and restraint, just wanted it to be over. Not at this time, Amara said, but I would like this documented in case she tries this again. The officer nodded. Smart. We'll have everything on record. As the police finished taking statements and gathering the video evidence, Patricia got into her car and drove away without another word. The neighbors slowly dispersed, but several of them came up to Amara first. I'm sorry we didn't speak up sooner, Dorothy said, tears in her eyes. We should have stood up to her a long time ago. The man with the doorbell camera shook his head. That was incredible. Where did you learn to do that? Amara managed a small smile. It's a long story. As she finally walked into her house, closing the door behind her, Amara's hand started shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off now, and she realized just how close things had come to getting much worse. She sat down on her couch, looking at the African fabric still hanging in her windows. Bright and beautiful and defiant, it was staying right where it was. The doorbell rang an hour later. Amara had just finished explaining to her kids what happened, keeping it simple and age-appropriate. When she opened the door, Dorothy stood there with 5 other neighbors behind her. We need to talk, Dorothy said, but she was smiling. Can we come in? Amara led them to her living room, suddenly self-conscious about the moving boxes she still hadn't unpacked. But nobody seemed to notice or care. First of all, Dorothy began, we owe you an apology. A big one. We've watched Patricia bully people for years and we never did anything about it. We were scared, or we convinced ourselves it wasn't our business, or we just didn't want the drama. The man from across the street, who introduced himself as Kevin, nodded. She went after my family when we first moved in. My son has autism, and she complained about him stimming in the front yard. Said it was disturbing the neighborhood. We almost moved because of her. A younger woman named Lisa spoke up. She reported my sister to Child Protective Services because she saw my niece playing outside in her pajamas on a Saturday morning. Said it was neglect. CPS investigated and found nothing, obviously, but it was traumatic for everyone. One by one, they shared their stories. Patricia had tormented nearly everyone in the neighborhood at some point. She'd filed false reports, made racist comments, abused her HOA position, and made life miserable for anyone she decided didn't belong. The thing is, Kevin said, we all complained to each other, but nobody ever stood up to her. Until today. What you did, that took guts. I didn't want to fight her, Amara said quietly. I tried everything to avoid it. We know, Dorothy said. We all saw how patient you were, how you documented everything, how you stayed calm at that meeting. You did everything right. She just wouldn't stop. Lisa leaned forward. Look, there's an emergency HOA meeting tomorrow night. The other board members called it after they heard what happened. A bunch of us are going, and we're going to demand Patricia be removed from the board. Removed? Amara blinked. Can they do that? The bylaws say a board member can be removed by a 2/3 vote of homeowners if they're abusing their position. We've got way more than 2/3 who are ready to vote her out. We've been collecting stories and documentation all afternoon. Kevin pulled out his phone. The video from my doorbell camera has been shared with at least 30 families in the neighborhood. Everyone's seen what really happened. People are angry. Not at you, at her. Over the next hour, they planned. Dorothy had kept records of every complaint she'd heard about Patricia over the years. Kevin had copies of false violations Patricia had issued. Lisa had text messages from other neighbors detailing harassment. Together, they had built a case. Why now? Amara asked. If this has been going on for years, why is everyone speaking up now? The room went quiet for a moment. Then Dorothy spoke. Because you showed us what courage looks like. You didn't back down. You didn't let her chase you away. And when she put her hands on you, you defended yourself without becoming like her. You stayed calm, stayed in control. I think we all realized if you could stand up to her, so could we. The next evening, the community center was packed. Amara arrived early with her folder of documentation, but she wasn't alone. Dorothy walked in with her, then Kevin and his family, then Lisa, then Rachel, the woman who'd given her the lawyer's card. More and more neighbors filed in until every seat was filled and people were standing along the walls. Patricia arrived 10 minutes late, clearly not expecting the crowd. Her confidence faltered when she saw how many people were there. She took her seat at the board table, but the other 2 board members wouldn't make eye contact with her. The board president, a quiet man named Gerald who'd always seemed intimidated by Patricia, cleared his throat. This emergency meeting has been called to address serious concerns about HOA board conduct. We've received multiple complaints and we need to address them publicly. Patricia tried to interrupt. This is highly irregular. We should discuss this in closed session. No, Gerald said, and his voice was firmer than Amara had ever heard it. This affects the entire community. It needs to be public. For the next 90 minutes, neighbors stood up one by one and shared their experiences. The father whose autistic son Patricia had complained about. The mother whose family had been reported to CPS. An elderly veteran Patricia had cited for displaying an American flag that was supposedly the wrong size. An interracial couple she'd harassed with noise complaints every time they had family over. Story after story. Pattern after pattern. Years of abuse and discrimination, all documented, all witnessed, all real. Patricia tried to defend herself at first. I was just enforcing the rules. That's my job. But Kevin stood up and said, the rules don't say you can grab people. The rules don't say you can use racial slurs. The rules don't give you the right to make someone's life hell just because you don't like them. The room erupted in applause. When it was Amara's turn to speak, she walked to the front calmly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I moved here because I got my dream job at the university. I moved here because I wanted a safe place for my kids to grow up. I moved here because it looked like a nice community. And it is a nice community. I've met wonderful neighbors. I've met kind people. But for the past 2 months, one person has tried to make me feel unwelcome in my own home. She pulled out her folder. I have documentation of 17 separate violations issued to me in 8 weeks. 17. My grass was cited for being too long when it measured exactly 3 inches. Right in the middle of the acceptable range. My car was cited for being parked on my own driveway. My children were cited for drawing with chalk. And finally, I was told to remove cultural fabric from my windows because it didn't fit the neighborhood aesthetic. Amara looked directly at Patricia. I tried to handle this peacefully. I documented everything. I followed every rule. I stayed calm at meetings. I did everything right. And it wasn't enough because this was never about rules. This was about someone who didn't think I belonged here because of where I'm from and what I look like. The room was silent. Even Patricia had nothing to say. Yesterday, that same person put her hands on me. Twice, then she charged at me. I defended myself using the absolute minimum force necessary. I have 25 years of martial arts training. I'm a 4th-degree black belt. I compete internationally. If I had wanted to hurt her, I could have. But I didn't because that's not who I am. That's not what my training taught me. She closed her folder. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for what everyone here deserves. To live in peace, to not be harassed, to not be discriminated against, to feel safe in our own homes. The applause started before she even sat down. It grew louder and louder until the whole room was on their feet. Gerald called for the vote. All in favor of removing Patricia Henderson from the HOA board for abuse of position, discrimination, and harassment? Hands shot up all over the room. Amara counted quickly. At least 50 people, maybe more. All opposed? 3 hands went up. Patricia and 2 people who left immediately after. The motion passes, Gerald said. Effective immediately, Patricia Henderson is removed from the HOA board. Furthermore, we'll be reviewing all violations issued in the past year and refunding any fines that were unjustly assessed. Patricia stood up, her face bright red. You can't do this. I'll sue. I'll fight this. You're welcome to try, Gerald said. But given that we have video evidence of you assaulting a resident, I'd suggest you might want to reconsider. Patricia grabbed her things and stormed out. The door slammed behind her, and for a moment nobody moved. Then someone started clapping. Then someone else. Then the whole room erupted again. Dorothy hugged Amara tight. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up. Kevin shook her hand. My son asked me this evening why that angry lady didn't like him. I didn't know what to say. Now I can tell him that the angry lady is gone, and it's because brave people stand up to bullies. As Amara drove home that night, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was from Daniel Chen, who ran the local martial arts dojo. Heard what happened. Would love to talk to you about teaching women's self-defense classes at our studio. Community needs more people like you. Amara smiled. She'd come to this neighborhood looking for a fresh start. Instead, she'd found something better. She'd found her voice. She'd found her strength. And maybe, just maybe, she'd helped a whole community find theirs too. When she pulled into her driveway, she noticed something. Several houses on her street had fabric hanging in their windows. Colorful patterns, different styles, but all of them visible, all of them proud, all of them saying the same thing. You belong here. We all belong here. 3 days after the meeting, Amara noticed the for sale sign go up in front of Patricia's house. She was watering her herb garden when she saw it, and for a moment, she felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief, certainly, but also something that felt almost like sadness. Not for Patricia exactly, but for the fact that it had come to this at all. Dorothy came over that afternoon with lemonade. Did you see? I saw, Amara said. Good riddance, if you ask me, Dorothy said, then caught herself. Sorry. I know you're probably more gracious about it than I am. Amara smiled. I'm not happy she's leaving. I'm just happy the harassment is over. There's a difference. You're a better person than most, Dorothy said, shaking her head, after everything she put you through. Over the next week, life started to feel normal. The constant anxiety Amara had been carrying melted away. She could take out her trash without looking over her shoulder. Her kids could draw on the driveway without her worrying about citations. She could leave for work without wondering what complaint would be waiting when she got home. But something unexpected was happening too. Her phone kept ringing. First it was Daniel from the martial arts studio, asking again about the self-defense classes. Then it was a reporter from the local newspaper wanting to write a story about standing up to neighborhood bullies. Then it was the community center director, asking if she'd be interested in teaching a course on conflict resolution. "I'm not a celebrity," Amara told Dorothy over coffee. "I just defended myself. That's all?" "That's not all, though," Dorothy said. "You did what a lot of people wish they had the courage to do. You stood up for yourself. You didn't back down. And you did it without becoming the bad guy. People respect that." Amara thought about it for a few days, then called Daniel back. "Tell me more about these self-defense classes." 2 weeks later, she taught her first class at the community center. She'd expected maybe 10 or 15 people. 43 showed up. Women of all ages, all backgrounds. Some were young mothers. Some were college students. Some were elderly women who'd spent their whole lives being told to be quiet and polite. "Self-defense isn't about being aggressive," Amara told them, standing at the front of the room in her GI. "It's about being aware. It's about setting boundaries. And it's about knowing that you have the right to protect yourself and your space." She taught them basic techniques: how to break a wrist grab, how to create distance, how to stay calm when adrenaline is flooding your system. But more than that, she taught them that they had power, even when they felt powerless. A woman named Brenda came up after the first class, eyes wet with tears. "My ex-husband used to grab my arm like that. For years. I never knew I could just break free. I always thought I was stuck." "You were never stuck," Amara said gently. "You just didn't know your own strength yet. The classes grew. Word spread. Soon Amara was teaching 3 times a week, and there was a waiting list. The local news did a story. Then a regional magazine. Suddenly, the quiet professor who just wanted to live peacefully had become something else entirely. A symbol, a teacher, an inspiration. But the biggest change came at home, in the neighborhood itself. The new HOA board held its first meeting, and it was nothing like the old ones. Gerald started by apologizing to everyone Patricia had targeted over the years. "We should have stopped this sooner. We should have listened when people came to us with complaints. We failed you and we're sorry." Then they got to work. They reviewed the HOA bylaws and removed vague rules that had been used to target people unfairly. They created a clear appeals process for violations. They established term limits so no one person could control the board for years. They even added a clause specifically prohibiting discrimination based on race, ethnicity, religion, or cultural expression. "These changes are because of you," Gerald told Amara after one meeting. "You made us realize what this neighborhood should be." "It shouldn't have taken someone getting harassed for months to figure that out," Amara said. But she was smiling. "You're right," Gerald admitted. "But sometimes people need a wake-up call. You were ours." The neighborhood transformed in other ways too. The summer block party that year was different. More families came. More cultures were represented. Someone brought Nigerian jollof rice. Someone else brought tamales. There was kimchi and pierogies and samosas. Kids who'd never spoken before were playing together in the street. Kevin's autistic son was stimming happily in the bounce house, and nobody said a word except to ask if he was having fun. Rachel's husband was teaching a group of kids some Spanish phrases. Dorothy was showing off photos of her new grandchild to anyone who'd look. And there, hanging from several houses, were colorful fabrics and windows. African prints, Indian saris, Mexican serapes. Each one different, each one beautiful, each one a quiet statement that this neighborhood had changed. Amara's daughter tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, Tyler wants to know if I can teach him some words in Igbo." "Of course, sweetheart. That's wonderful." As the sun set and the party wound down, Amara found herself sitting on her front porch with a plate of food from a dozen different countries. She thought about how different things could have been. If she'd given up, if she'd moved away, if she'd let Patricia win, but she hadn't. And in not giving up, she'd given everyone else permission not to give up either. Her phone buzzed. Another text from someone asking about the self-defense classes. She was about to reply when Dorothy sat down next to her. "You know what the best part of all this is?" Dorothy asked. "What's that?" "Patricia thought she was going to run you out of the neighborhood. Instead, you turned it into an actual community. That's gotta be some